I'm going to assume if you're watching this video, you know what Trackmania is, so I won't waste your time explaining what it is. However, I'll provide a brief backstory on this game's most competitive modes. Ever since ESWC 2006, major Trackmania competitions have been played in what's known as Cup mode, wherein usually 4 players race in rounds on a series of maps trying to gain points in each round until one player gets to the point limit, in which they become a finalist. The finalist then has to win another round in order to become the actual winner. This mode was used for well over a decade as the official mode of most major competitions, and many other competitions only differed slightly from this style of point scoring. Jump to Trackmania Grand League beta season, hosted in fall of 2019. 16 elite players drive 10 laps on a set of 10 tracks, but at the end of the race, the players in the bottom half of positions lose all of their points. This format occurs over a series of 10 weekends, in which the 8 players who have accumulated the most points go through to a final bracket, played in Cup mode.
Oh, look, Bren! But Bren doesn't have enough speed! And there he goes! Kappa takes first place in TMGL beta season.
A few seasons later, this system has been refined down to 6 steps of 6 laps over 6 maps, wherein players in the bottom 8 only lose all their points on the last 2 maps, and half their points in the middle 2 maps, and no points on the first 2 maps. The top 8 at the end of this format goes through to a 1v1 bracket hosted on a single day, wherein players rush to finish 2-lap versions of a selection of the maps from the season, and the winner of the bracket takes home the gold. To compare the two, Cup mode was used for 13 years as the game's competitive standard, and was rarely to never complained about. The TMGL game mode, known as Champion mode, has become one of the most widely debated topics of Trackmania since this game's conception. So what about this game mode is so controversial?
That is an absolutely phenomenal performance by Roland right now. He is really doing well right here on this track. Gets the landing! Oh, no. Roland!
We are all right behind him, ready to pounce on any mistake. And who hit the pillar? Who was it? Was it Spam? Oh dear God, Spam has hit the pillar.
It's probably obvious to most already, but the concept of losing points in a tournament is pretty rare, especially if it's designed to be the most prestigious tournament of a specific sport. In TMGL, there have been numerous incidents in which players have played near perfectly for the first 5 maps, then blundered on the 6th, falling just shy of being within the top 8, and losing all of their points. The biggest example of this happened quite recently in Step 1 of TMGL Winter 2021. Top player and 2016 World Champion Pac opened the step with a 2nd place, followed by a 1st place, then 2nd, 1st, and 2nd again. Going into the last map, he had 82 points. Keep in mind that just last season, which operated under the same conditions, the 8th place player was able to qualify under 6 steps with just 126 points. Pac would have essentially had a golden ticket to guarantee a playoff spot with a performance this good. However, at the end of the first lap, he blundered completely.
Here we go. Let's hope all the players can get this right. Land on the 2nd step, good so far. Pac clipping, no! Pac has made a big mistake.
I forgot to mention that along with this special point system came special maps. At the end of each lap is a section known as an identity, which can range from a simple set of turns to a series of stunts. Throughout Trackmania's history, tech has been the predominant driving style, wherein players drift on tarmac surfaces through tight corners. Players could push insanely hard in train maps to their very limits without any worry about luck or choking, as one mistake on a round doesn't cost much more than a few missed points. But in TMGL, the maps are mixed in their style. They're fast, chaotic, designed to throw off even the best of players. The players are fighting against these maps to survive, and sometimes the map wins. On map 6 of Step 1, Pac lost 82 points due to a failed identity section on lap 1. He ended up in 10th place on the map, and therefore 10th place in the leaderboards after this inaugural step. Over the course of the last 4 seasons of TMGL, we've seen the maps improve, being less luck-based in the identity section and more focused on raw pace of the players, and many of the TMGL players seem to be content with this style of maps. We've also seen the point loss system be refined numerous times over the past couple of years, which has appeased some while seeming like ignorance of the main issue by many others. Fortunately, at the time of writing this video, Hideo announced that the point system would be completely overhauled for next season, which has taken the edge off of most players and viewers alike. Finally, it seems like Nadeo is listening to the complaints of the players and is ready to take them into account. Strangely, the CEO of Nadeo, Hylas, alluded to the fact that the TMGL organizers have been planning on changing the system for the past 2 seasons, but nobody knew about this, and this stems from a greater issue with the connection between Nadeo and the Trackmania community. The TMGL fiasco over the past 2 years is just the surface of the issues that have been facing the Trackmania community. In fact, competitive Trackmania has been on life support for the past 5 years, and TMGL may be the only major Trackmania competition that we will see anytime soon. So, aside from the 16 Grand League players, we could be nearing the death of competitive Trackmania. To start, let's talk about this game's stability. The main appeal of Trackmania for a lot of players is creativity and hosting and participating in community events. One of the longtime streamers and TMGL competitors, Spam, hosted a popular event every week called Spam's Weekly Race, starting in 2016. It was modeled off a weekly event by a former streamer and world champion Frostbuel, in which players drove on community-made multi-lap tracks for about 45 minutes, or 20-ish laps. Events like these were huge for the community and gave players a chance to show their skills in front of their favorite streamer and play against their friends in an organized way. However, in 2017, Mania Planet 4 was released, an update to the previous version of Trackmania. It was designed to be an overhaul of the interface, including many new features like an in-game 3D modeler, tons of new blocks, and an update to the game's physics. On the surface, this update seemed incredible, but as event organizers prepared their competitions for this update, things started to fall apart quickly. Spam's weekly race was ruined, unplayable. Servers began to fall apart whenever there were more than 40 players online, so a race that used to be able to support well over 100 players was definitely not possible to run normally. Despite trying to reach out to Nadeo, Spam's pleas went mostly ignored. Eventually, the game's netcode was fixed to be able to barely support servers with higher player count, but never quite to the same degree as before the Mania Planet 4 update. In Trackmania 2020, server issues became even worse. Netcode issues were so bad that many players began teleporting around maps online. Even Zerator, a popular French streamer who Nadeo gave special attention to for making their game look good, wasn't able to ignore this problem, as it affected his very own tournament upon the game's release. Though nobody knows exactly where the problem lies, probably including Nadeo's developers themselves, I'd suspect that the netcode hasn't been changed all that much over the past decade. After all, the most stable servers for Trackmania are currently those still running on Trackmania Nations Forever, released in 2008, but that's just hearsay. Very recently, Nadeo has been rapidly trying to fix these issues with patches that help the netcode run better and smoother on servers with more players, but many issues still persist. And it has been such a long time since these issues arose that the damage has already been done. Many people and even large organizations don't want to bother with arranging large competitions anymore, since the majority end up falling apart if too many players join a single server, and they end up having to accommodate by splitting it into multiple servers or ruining the overall experience for the players. So once the server issues get fixed completely, surely organized events will spring back up, right? Well, probably not. At least not in the same way, as there's still something much more that has affected the competitive scene in Trackmania. I mentioned Zerator earlier, but I didn't explain too much about his cup. Though most are probably familiar, the Zerator Cup is an event that has been happening yearly since 2013. Zerator himself has become much more popular since then, and in turn has brought a ton of attention to Trackmania, and especially during a time when the game was in its dying phase. In 2015, the Electronic Sports World Cup hosted Trackmania for the final time. This was the beginning of the end for competitive Trackmania as we knew it for so many years. See, ESWC always hosted Trackmania as a tech competition, which, as I explained before, was the go-to competitive format for Trackmania, since it was so integral to how the car handled and how the game was designed. And I'm saying that as someone who is not a tech player, but I have to recognize that the style was chosen due to how fundamental it was to the game's competitive scene. Despite many efforts for the community to host events mimicking the ESWC event, it never quite felt the same, and the prize pools were lackluster at best. However, the Zerator Cup kept growing, and along with offering decent prize pools, being a finalist in this cup also brought immense clout, one of the most important aspects of esports. Zerator Cup wasn't just Trackmania. It was about a streamer interacting with his fans and putting on a show for them. The maps were a show, the format was a show, the players weren't just contestants, but also circus clowns. To see a world champion go from technical, high-speed racing to driving over blimps, bouncing on poles, and even playing blindfolded sometimes was simply more entertaining for a general audience that had no real stake in Trackmania, but followed a monolith like Zerator. And despite all the seemingly ignorant decisions and terrible updates, Nadeo is not a dumb company. Nadeo knew that if they wanted to save their game, they had to change with the times. However, as many of us know, business decisions and community interests are rarely synchronous. By 2019, the Zerator Cup, or aptly named the Trackmania Cup, was the most prestigious event in the game, with no close second. All top players had no other choice than either leave the game or play the cup and show that they were still highly skilled, despite the new format. The skill level was incredible at the Zerator Cup, and everyone could see it. But behind the scenes, a shift in player base was underway.